The settlement of Bjarnarhöfn stood against the northern winds like a sentinel carved from the very mountains that cradled it. Wooden longhouses stretched along the fjord's edge, their turf roofs blending with the landscape as smoke rose from cooking fires into the grey autumn sky. The year was marked by the changing of seasons, and as the leaves turned golden and the days grew shorter, the community prepared for the long winter ahead. Torsten, a seasoned warrior in his 32nd year, had served the chieftain's household for more than a decade. His reputation as a protector was well earned through countless expeditions and defense of the settlement's borders. The scars on his weathered face told stories of survival, and his steady hand had never faltered when duty called. He moved through the settlement with the confidence of someone who understood his place in the world, yet recent events had stirred an unease deep within him. The chieftain, Halvard, had summoned him 3 days prior to the Great Hall. The massive structure dominated the center of the settlement, its carved wooden pillars depicting the histories of their ancestors. Inside, the warmth from the central hearth contrasted sharply with the autumn chill outside. Halvard sat in his high seat, his grey beard braided with silver rings that clinked softly as he moved. The chieftain's expression carried the weight of difficult decisions. The assignment was unlike anything Torsten had received before. Deep in the mountains, hunters had discovered a woman living in isolation within a cave system. She was not like others they had encountered. The reports spoke of unusual characteristics that set her apart, and Halvard had decided she needed protection and observation. The chieftain explained that she would be brought to a secure dwelling on the settlement's outskirts, and Torsten would serve as her guardian. No harm was to come to her, and no one outside a select few would know of her presence. Torsten accepted without hesitation, though questions burned in his mind. Halvard provided few details, saying only that the woman posed no threat but required careful handling. The chieftain's trust in Torsten's discretion was absolute, and the warrior would not betray that faith. He prepared himself mentally for what lay ahead, gathering supplies and ensuring his weapons were in perfect condition, though he hoped they would remain unused. The woman arrived on a cold morning when frost painted the grass silver. She was escorted by 2 of Halvard's most trusted advisors, her form wrapped in thick furs that concealed most of her appearance. Torsten waited outside the dwelling that would serve as her quarters, a sturdy structure built slightly apart from the main settlement. It offered privacy while remaining accessible should help be needed. The building had been reinforced with additional timber, and a lock had been fitted to the door, though Torsten wondered if it was meant to keep others out or keep her in. As the escorts departed, Torsten caught his first clear glimpse of the woman. She moved with an unusual grace, her steps light despite the heavy furs. When she turned to face him, her eyes met his with an intelligence that startled him. They were an extraordinary shade of amber, almost luminous in the morning light. Her features carried an otherworldly quality, delicate yet somehow strong, but it was what lay beneath the furs that truly captured his attention. When she removed the outer layers in the warmth of the dwelling, Torsten saw the wings. They extended from her back, folded close to her body, but unmistakable in their presence. The appendages were covered in what appeared to be feathers, though their texture seemed different from any bird he had observed. They shifted slightly with her movements, responding to her breathing with subtle adjustments. The sight defied everything Torsten understood about the natural world, yet there they were, undeniably real. The woman spoke in their language, though her accent carried unfamiliar tones. She introduced herself simply, her name carrying musical qualities that Torsten's northern tongue struggled to replicate perfectly. She asked for water, and he provided it without hesitation, noting how her hands trembled slightly as she drank. Exhaustion lined her face, and dark circles shadowed those remarkable eyes. Whatever journey had brought her here had taken its toll. Torsten established a routine in those first days. He would arrive each morning to check on her welfare, bringing food prepared in the main hall's kitchens. He ensured the dwelling remained warm and secure, chopping wood for the fire and checking the door's lock each evening. The woman watched him work with quiet observation, rarely speaking unless necessary. She seemed to be studying him as carefully as he studied her, measuring his character through his actions. Communication developed slowly between them. Torsten was not naturally talkative, preferring action to words, but he found himself making efforts to put her at ease. He explained the settlement's layout, described the changing seasons in these northern lands, and shared simple observations about daily life. She listened intently, sometimes asking questions that revealed a sharp mind behind her circumstances. Her queries ranged from practical matters about food and water to more philosophical questions about the settlement's governance and the people's beliefs. As days turned to weeks, Torsten began to notice details about her condition. The wings, magnificent as they appeared, seemed to cause her discomfort. She would shift position frequently, adjusting their placement as if seeking relief from constant strain. He observed her attempting to reach behind herself, trying to ease muscles he could only imagine existed. Her face would tighten with pain she tried to hide, and her breathing would become shallow during these episodes. The dwelling's confines clearly troubled her as well. She would stand by the small window for extended periods, gazing out at the landscape beyond. Her fingers would grip the wooden frame until her knuckles whitened, and Torsten could see longing etched into every line of her posture. The sky seemed to call to her in ways he could not fully comprehend. He had spent his life on solid ground, mastering the earth beneath his feet, but she appeared to belong to the air itself. One evening, as Torsten prepared to secure the dwelling for the night, she spoke to him with unexpected directness. Her voice carried urgency that had been absent before, and her amber eyes locked onto his with intensity that demanded attention. She asked him about the lock on the door, about the guards who patrolled nearby, about the true nature of her situation. Was she a guest or a prisoner? The question hung in the air between them, unanswered because Torsten himself was uncertain of the truth. He chose his words carefully, explaining that his duty was to ensure her safety. The settlement could be dangerous for someone so different, and Halvard wanted to prevent any incidents born of fear or misunderstanding. But even as he spoke, Torsten recognized the weakness in his reasoning. Safety and captivity could wear the same face, and the woman clearly understood this distinction. She moved closer to him then, close enough that he could see the fine details of her features. Her skin bore faint markings, patterns that seemed almost deliberate in their arrangement. The wings rustled softly, creating whispers of sound that filled the small space. She asked him directly whether he had ever felt trapped, whether he understood what it meant to be denied one's fundamental nature. Her words struck deeper than she might have realized, touching on thoughts Torsten had buried beneath layers of duty and obligation. The warrior found himself considering his own life with new perspective. He had chosen this path, yes, but how much choice did any of them truly have? The expectations of family, community, and tradition shaped their destinies from birth. He had never questioned his role because questioning seemed pointless. But standing before this woman, whose very existence challenged understanding, Torsten felt the first stirrings of doubt about certainties he had never examined. She continued speaking, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. She told him that the wings were not decorative appendages or mysterious growths. They were functional, designed for a purpose she had been denied since her capture. She spoke of the sky as others might speak of home, with a devotion that transcended mere preference. Flying was not something she did, but something she was, and to be grounded felt like a form of slow death. Torsten listened without interrupting, his trained warrior's awareness noting every detail. Her pupils dilated slightly when she spoke of flight, and her breathing quickened with emotion barely contained. The wings trembled with what might have been anticipation or frustration. He found himself believing her completely, though accepting that belief required abandoning rational explanations he had constructed to make sense of the impossible. She asked him then for something he had not expected: help. Not immediate escape, but assistance in understanding her true situation. Who had ordered her brought here? What plans existed for her future? Would she spend the rest of her life in this dwelling, watched but never free? Her questions deserved answers Torsten did not possess, but he found himself wanting to provide them nonetheless. The warrior made no promises that evening. He secured the door, as always, and returned to his own quarters in the settlement's warrior hall. Sleep came with difficulty, his mind replaying their conversation and examining it from every angle. He had sworn oaths to Halvard, pledges of loyalty that formed the foundation of his identity. But he had also sworn to protect the innocent and defend those unable to defend themselves. Where did this woman fit within those obligations? Winter's approach transformed Bjarnarhöfen into a fortress against the elements. Snow began falling in earnest, blanketing the settlement in white that muffled sound and limited visibility. The fjord's waters darkened to nearly black, reflecting the shortened days and long nights that characterized this season. Torsten's duties expanded as the weather worsened, but his primary focus remained the woman with wings. He had begun seeking answers to her questions, carefully and discreetly. Conversations with other warriors, seemingly casual observations around the Great Hall, and attention to Halvard's meetings yielded fragments of information. What Torsten learned disturbed him more than he wanted to admit. The woman's presence in Bjarnarhöfen was not temporary protection, but indefinite confinement. Halvard had been approached by traders from distant lands who spoke of others like her, beings they claimed could be valuable for reasons the chieftain would not specify openly. The chieftain's intentions appeared to involve keeping her until these traders returned in spring, when the seas became navigable again. What would happen then remained unclear, but the implications troubled Torsten deeply. He had served Halvard faithfully, believing the chieftain to be a just leader who prioritized his people's welfare. This situation suggested different priorities, ones that treated the woman as property rather than a person. Torsten's visits to the dwelling increased in frequency and duration. He found excuses to spend time there, bringing additional supplies or checking structural integrity against the mounting snow. The woman noticed these changes, her perceptive nature missing nothing. Their conversations deepened, moving beyond surface pleasantries to discussions of genuine substance. She shared fragments of her story, carefully omitting details that might reveal too much about her origins. She spoke of a community far from these northern lands, a place where others like her lived in harmony with their nature. They had developed ways of existing that honored both earth and sky, creating balance between their unique abilities and the practical needs of survival. But conflict had come, as it inevitably did, when fear encountered difference. Some had scattered, seeking refuge in remote places where their presence might go unnoticed. She had been alone for many seasons before the hunters found her. The woman's wings had begun to deteriorate from disuse and confinement. Torsten noticed the change gradually, the feathers losing their luster and some even falling away. She tried to maintain them through whatever grooming she could manage in the limited space, but the dwelling's dimensions prevented proper extension or exercise. He could see the physical toll this took, the way she moved more stiffly each day, the increasing pain etched into her expressions. One particularly harsh storm trapped Torsten in the dwelling longer than planned. The wind howled with such ferocity that returning to the main settlement would have been dangerous even for someone of his experience. The woman offered no complaint about the extended company, instead seeming almost grateful for the presence of another during the storm's fury. They sat near the fire, listening to the wind's assault on the structure's walls, and she asked him about his life. Torsten found himself sharing stories he rarely recounted. His childhood in a smaller settlement to the south, the death of his family in a raid when he was barely old enough to lift a sword, his journey to Bjarnarhöfn seeking purpose and belonging. He spoke of battles fought and comrades lost, of the weight that came with taking lives even in justified defense. The woman listened with the same attention she gave everything, her amber eyes reflecting firelight as snow continued falling outside. She asked whether he had ever wanted a different life, whether the path of a warrior had been his choice or simply the only option available. The question struck at the heart of thoughts Torsten had been avoiding. He admitted uncertainty, acknowledging that he had never seriously considered alternatives. The warrior's path provided structure, purpose, and a place within the community, but it also demanded constant readiness for violence, an existence defined by potential conflict rather than creation or growth. The woman suggested that perhaps they were not so different, despite outward appearances. Both had been shaped by circumstances beyond their control, both had adapted to survive, and both carried the weight of choices made or accepted without full awareness of their implications. Her words created an unexpected kinship between them, a recognition of shared humanity that transcended their obvious differences. As the storm subsided, and Torsten prepared to return to his quarters, the woman made her request explicit. She needed his help to escape.